Well, it's good to be up here at last to talk to you about my project. It's something I've actually been working on and off for about 4 years since I've lived in the neighborhood, until along came Neighborhood Institute and got me going again, put me in the right direction, got me in touch with a lot of good resources. And I addressed that in the presentation, but I'd like also to talk about some of the steps that I took prior to getting involved with the group. Very preliminary steps, things you probably would have thought out yourself, but just wanted to include them in the presentation. I'm in the Bonnycastle neighborhood, and if we can go to the next slide, I think this is the one with the map. So you can see our icon right here. Our neighborhood is bordered by, I started to say Central Park, Cherokee Park, Bardstown Road, Eastern Parkway, and Speed Avenue. So it's a very old neighborhood. It was hit pretty hard by the tornado in '74, as well as Laurie's neighborhood. So we lost a lot of valuable trees, lost some homes as well, and a lot of things have taken place since the tornado to improve the neighborhood. One of which apparently was planting a lot of trees, because we have a lot of trees now that have matured and they're uprooting the sidewalks. So we need to address that at this point. We fixed a problem, but now we need to address another problem that's created. So that's really the basis of the project. These are several homes and multifamily housing properties in our neighborhood, and most of these properties in the Bonnycastle neighborhood were constructed in the early 1900s. And if you walk down a few streets, you might think the sidewalks were constructed in the early 1900s, because they're coming apart right now. But homes are in good shape. For the most part, the neighborhood takes care of properties. We have a lot of green space, things that Michael was talking about. People enjoy using the easements, stuff like that. But our sidewalks are in dire need of some help, and I do have some pictures to kind of point that out to you. Next slide, please. So, because we're so close to Bardstown Road, and my house in particular is very close to Bardstown Road, I can walk to my very favorite restaurant, which is the Uptown. And I walk up there about once a week and have a nice evening with my husband. We listen to jazz. We have a great meal. It's a good plug for the Uptown, because if you haven't been there, it's just a wonderful neighborhood restaurant, and it's a real jewel for the city, I believe. So at any rate, we can walk to restaurants in our neighborhood. Next slide, please. We can walk to bus stops, and we have plenty of those in our neighborhood. So it's very easy to get to them, at least distance-wise. They're plentiful. Many times there's a bus stop seating area there, and they look very nice. It's inviting to sit down and wait for the bus. And I think especially in the last 6 months, more and more of my neighbors have been taking buses for obvious reasons, whether they're working downtown or other parts of the city. But you see a lot more people walking and sitting at those bus stop routes. We can walk to the farmer's market. We can walk to pick up a gallon of milk. There are plenty of places to buy a bottle of wine, a cup of coffee. And the next slide. Well, maybe not all of us, because this is one of the sidewalk areas, a street just adjacent to mine. And as you can see, this area is in dire need of some help. And this is not uncommon for the two streets that I'm focusing on right now. But as you can see to the left of the slide, there's a huge tree trunk there. It's a beautiful, beautiful old tree. And we certainly don't want to lose the tree, but we do want to do something about the sidewalks. And at this residence in particular, when I was out taking pictures, a lady that lived in the home that sits right in front of the sidewalk came running out, and she said, "Are you here to do something about the sidewalk?" And I said, "Well, I'm working on a project to hopefully get some help for the sidewalks in our neighborhood." And she was very thankful that somebody was taking an interest in it. I promised to keep her in touch, and I've been kind of keeping her in the loop on emails as to where we are at this point. But it's going to be a long process, obviously. There's a lot of work to be done. One of the issues that she brought up to me was something I didn't know about, but I confirmed with the gentleman from the IPL group. I've forgotten his name, but thank you, Mr. Schreck. She said she had talked to the city about this issue a couple of times, and they informed her that the sidewalk in front of your property is really your responsibility to maintain. So, as you can see from this picture, there's a handrail that goes down kind of a steep incline to the street. Obviously, there are steps that go down through there, and those are in pretty bad shape as well. She had volunteered to take care of the steps, but until the city could help work out something with the sidewalk here that was going to be sustainable, she really wasn't prepared to make the effort and the expense into improving the stairwell going down. So that's one of the things we talked about. I talked to Bill about it. He said, yes, definitely, that is really the way the law reads or whatever. But he did give me some suggestions on some monies that could be available. So I'm going to take some of those routes and see what we can get from those different suggestions that he had. Again, this is just one instance. I think I have a couple of pictures. This is the step right in front of her house that goes down to the street. This is a sidewalk in our neighborhood that is on the property of an absentee owner. It's a rental unit. And the house is very nice. They take beautiful care of the home. But as you can see, the sidewalk leading from the home down to the street is in pretty bad shape there. Now, since this is on private property, I'm assuming there's not much we can do about that. But that would create a dangerous situation for a lot of different people if you were trying to access that building or get out of the building. If it was at night and there was a fire, you could probably trip right down into the street from there. And the next slide, please, Mary. That's my dog in the lower corner there. He assisted me on the journeys. But just another view of another step that goes down to the streets. This one is not as dangerous as far as the structure of the sidewalk, but as you can see, there are lots of leaves on there. So that brings up another point. Not only do we want to get help from the city to help us improve the sidewalks, but we also want to encourage our neighbors to keep the sidewalks and the stairs clean so that they're safer to walk on. So that'll be something I'll take on with this project as well. This is in a sidewalk that's flat and looks like it could be relatively safe, but you can see the water standing there. That's about 6 inches of water, and it's on top of about 2 inches of mud, probably. And of course, the obvious reason for the problem here is the very steep slope on the wall there, and all of the rain and pulling the dirt, everything else down into the sidewalk with it. So we need to find some ways to help keep those spaces retaining the water instead of shedding it down into the sidewalk. Just another picture of the same thing, this time covered in leaves. So again, that's something we need to attack. And up until I joined this class, the steps I had taken, first of all, about 3 years ago, I contacted the Metro Call online and submitted a work order. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but about a year later, somebody got back to me and a representative had been assigned. So I was all excited about this representative being assigned. I got this through the email. So I sent a message back to him, and if we'll go to the next slide, Mary, it kind of put us into at least we were talking to each other online, and I offered to put together sort of a walking journal of the sidewalks on our 2 streets. And I scored areas in front of each address as to whether it was just cracked, if there was upheaval, if there were chunks out of it, etc. Well, he said that was very, very helpful. That was going to help him tremendously, and that was about 7 months ago. I haven't heard anything more. So then it occurred to me that you don't just submit a request. Apparently there is some follow-up that has to take place on this. So I did send some messages, and the next slide will show us, voila, there's a new sidewalk, at least in one little section. And maybe it has something to do with my message. Maybe it didn't, because MSD and LG&E were doing some projects at the same time. So next slide, please. So my questions for myself are, should I just focus on specific areas who are have the biggest need in these sidewalks in the neighborhood, or should I continue to focus on the whole neighborhood? That's just a question for myself. Next slide. Since joining the Neighborhood Institute, some of the actions I've taken are to contact or revisit the project and to use all the resources that have been made available to us, including people within this class. I've talked to a lot of people and gotten some great suggestions, different programs that have been presented, and of course government. Our Metro Council member is Tom Owen, and I'm going to get to know Tara Long, his assistant, very well. And next slide, please. And the project I considered a great success when we can all walk to our favorite restaurant on Bardstown Road. And I think that's the last slide.